Hello guys, so this is the very easy to use pet sorcerer guide. In this guide we'll talk about all the different skills, the different gears that we can use and how to use the build effectively. We'll talk about everything in detail, so we'll just get straight into it. If we look at our stats, so when we've got a potion active, we have 3000 spell damage, nearly 47% spell critical. We have a big pool of max magicka, 46,500 and 19,000 health, so we are very tanky. It's very unlikely that we're gonna die when using this build. With Ebon we have over 20,000 health, and we have a decent resist as well, which does go up using some skills which we will get into in a second. All of our attribute points into magicka, get the most out of magic. Our pet damage and our damage scales off of our max magicka, so the higher it is, the more damage we will do. So if we look at what sets we're using on this build, so we want the Maelstrom Lightning Staff with a weapon damage enchantment, Nirnhomed or Infused. They both seem to do about the same for me, so it's entirely up to you which trait you want to go for here. Light and heavy attacks will deal additional damage to enemies in your wall of elements. It adds a good 2,000 to 4,000 DPS. If you can't get this, then just run a same copy of the staff you have on your back bar. You want your weapons to be gold because there's a 200 or so damage increase when you go from purple to gold, so you definitely want to be golden out your weapons to get the most out of your damage. Back bar, we have several options. We'll talk about that in just one second. 5-piece set that we want on both of our bars is Necropotence. We want all of our pieces divines. You can take the chest and legs in infused if you want for that little bit of extra magicka. The damage is roughly the same. So we'll just get a massive pool of extra max magicka running Necropotence, so our pets and our damage is increased a lot, and we have a lot of resources. Sustain on this build is absolutely fantastic. We're going to be near full magic at all times. So second set, we're running Infallible Aether. We want this 3-piece on the Maelstrom bar and then 5-piece on the back bar. For traits on the jewelry, you can go 3 Arcane, 3 Bloodthirsty, or a mix of both. I have infused here just because I was testing it, but I think it doesn't perform as well as Arcane or Bloodthirsty would, so it's down to you, whatever you'd prefer here. We want spell damage enchantments on all of the jewelry. Infallible Aether, it will give us minus Slayer, increasing our damage done to dungeon trial and arena monsters by 5%, and then our fully charged heavy attack will deal additional damage, and they'll also be afflicted with minor vulnerability, increasing their damage taken by 8%. This is perfect for group content. I always recommend one person in each raid group having this. The extra 8% damage will be amazing for the group DPS, and also we do have a heavy attack on this back bar as well, so our sustain is good, and this set is perfect for how our rotation works. We do have alternative sets that we can run here instead of Infallible Aether. We do want a flame glyph on this back bar as well, reason being we're running the Alhambris monster set, but I'll talk about that more detail in just a second. So alternative sets, if we don't have Infallible Aether does drop from the Craglorn trials, so we could look at Mother's Sorrow, again with a flame damage enchantment infused. This will just add a lot of spell critical, so this is good for our AoE damage. Our build, all of our abilities are AoE damage, so this will be a lot better than a lot of other sets because we just have that high critical and we can do good damage to everything, not just one target. And then the third option is Julianos. This is a crafted set. It's really easy to get. You can just craft the pieces, either body or jewelry. Jewelry will be a little bit more expensive, so you could just go for Necropotence jewelry with a few Julianos body pieces and then a Julianos shock staff on the back bar. This will give you a bit of spell crit, spell damage, and max magicka. In the damage tests that I've done, they all perform relatively equal. They're roughly the same. There's only about 1,000 or so difference in between them. However, I find Infallible Aether is the best because it gives a massive group utility, so your whole group will benefit from that 8% extra damage. So a weapon damage enchantment on the Maelstrom bar. If you do not have a Maelstrom staff, get a second infallible Aether shock staff, nerd honed or infused, and then infused on the back bar with a flame damage enchantment for infallible Aether. Monster set we're running is going to be Alambris. This will give us, whenever we deal flame or shock damage, a 10% chance to summon a meteor that will deal that damage type within all to all enemies. So it has a big AoE on the ground, and it has quite a frequent proc time because it does 5 seconds of damage, and then it can occur every 8 seconds, so it's only on cooldown really for 3 seconds when you look at it like that. All of our abilities and our staff light and heavy attacks are going to be shock damage. This is why we have a flame damage enchantment on the back bar here. So we do our light attacks and heavy attacks with this, so it has a high chance to trigger that flame damage enchantment, and that will trigger the flame damage from the Alambris. It deals a lot of damage, and it refreshes really quickly. I'll show you a quick example here. If I just quickly turn off the pets. So on a target dummy, there's the fire enchantment. So that triggered straight away off the ability there, and there's the lightning enchantment. So as you can see, it procs relatively quickly, and that'll do a huge amount of damage. It's great for trash mobs as well, because everything on this build is AoE damage. It helps clear trash, and if you're fighting mobs with additional adds, it helps clear them as well. Alternative sets to Alambris. I'd say the only real good alternative here is Zarn. You'd want this to be in Divines as well. This is just a spare set that I have, Divines with a magic enchantment. So Zarn, when you're in close range of an enemy, you put a beam of fire that connects to you and the enemy that you're attacking. It is single target, but it does do a lot of damage. So if you're fighting a singular boss and you know you're going to be in close range throughout the fight, Zarn will outperform Alambris slightly, but overall I'd say Alambris is the best option to go for. For the head, you could put it infused for the extra max magic, but again I prefer Divines. Same for the Zarn, you want the max magic enchantment. What we want is either heavy or medium for the helmet, and then heavy or medium for the shoulders. This is to get our Undaunted passive, which we will talk about in a second. So just quick recap, it's a Necropotent. We want 5 pieces on both of our bars to maintain that max magic enchantment, and then Infallible Aether on the back bar with a shock staff with a flame damage enchantment to keep up our Alambris. All gear Divines, 1 heavy, 1 medium. So if we look at our skills then, so we don't use any skills in the Dark Magic tree. For Daedric Summoning, we want Bound Aegis slotted on both bars. The reason is, while slotted, this increases our max magic by 8%. As we said earlier, the more magic you have, the more damage you do, and having that bigger resource pool is going to be very beneficial. It also gives us Minor Ward and Minor Resolve, so this gives us a slight spell and physical resistance, making us that tiny bit more tanky. We want this on both of our bars, so the buff stays up at all times. For our pets, we want the Volatile Familiar. This one is our little scamp, and when we activate the pet, he does a shock damage every 2 seconds for 8 seconds around him. This does actually quite a lot of damage, so I'll show you an example of this now. So this is our little scamp, and when we activate him, you can see the shockwave shooting out of him. That'll deal heavy AoE damage to everything around him, so we want to keep this up at all times as well. The rotation is designed that this will be kept up at all times. Third ability is our Twilight Matriarch. This ability, you only ever activate it if you need a heal, because we've got the healing morph on here. So what she'll do, she'll just attack enemies that you're attacking during the fight, so she'll be dealing damage herself just by being active. If you do take any damage, or if any of your party in your group have taken damage, you can just activate her and she'll heal. This can crit as well, so you can normally get a good 10 to 20,000 heal. So for damage dealers, that's going to heal pretty much up to full. So all you have to do is just activate the bird, and that's an insta heal for you and your allies. If your pets have taken damage, they can get healed as well, although pets now in Dungeons and Trials do not die. The good thing about these pets as well is whatever you heavy attack, they will also attack. So I heavy attack here, the pets are now attacking this one. If I change my target here and heavy attack this one, my pets will now attack this one. So you're always able to control what your pets are attacking. So I can activate the ability, and the pet is going to start pumping out lots of damage there. I can heavy attack here, have him switch. So whatever you choose, the pets will attack and follow you. So I'll quickly dismiss the pets now so we can carry on looking at the skills. So on this bar now, we're going to go with Liquid Lightning. So this is one of our main AoEs. It's one of the hardest hitting AoEs that we have. It puts a big lightning pool on the floor, and this will damage all enemies in the area around it. It also allows for a synergy to be activated by people in your group, which will also deal a big amount of AoE damage. Last skill on our Maelstrom bar is going to be Elemental Blockade. It's the bigger, longer lasting morph of Wall of Elements. So we have this on our shock staff. This is going to put enemies off balance when you do it. So see, we had that off balance trigger there. We'll explain this in a little more detail when we look at the champion points, but we do increase damage against enemies that are off balance. So having this up all of the time, setting enemies off balance, will also increase our overall damage. We have the Destruction Staff ultimate on this bar as well. It has a huge area of effect and a lot of damage. So as you can see, this big circle here, everything that would be standing inside this circle will take damage, and it's a big amount of damage that it does as well. So as you can see, look at the numbers that are hitting here on these target dummies. And it lasts quite a long time as well. The morph we want for this is going to be Elemental Rage. So this means that it will last longer, an extra 2 seconds while we have a shock staff equipped, and it'll stay whenever you throw it. So this is great for clearing trash. This is our main ultimate as well, so we do use this on bosses. Even in single target fights, this will deal a lot of damage. So activate this as soon as it's ready. For our back bar, so we have to keep the pets on both of our bars. If we drop our pets, then when we switch bars, the pet will die. I'll show you a quick example of this now. So if I just change my bird pet out here, so while I've got it active on this bar, if I switch to a bar without it, then the pet will instantly die. This is why we need our pets to be active on both of our bars, so they do not die when we switch. Ability here we use is Daedric Prey. This curses the enemy, and it means that all of our pets will now do an extra 55% damage to the target that we have cursed. So when we're fighting trash, we generally don't use this in our rotation. We'll just use the Liquid Lightning, Wall of Elements, and then our Scamp pet, our Volatile Familiar. If there is a big ad with a lot more health, then we'll throw this on it, and also we throw this on our bosses, so they take an extra 55% damage. After it expires as well, it'll deal a huge amount of damage. So 6 seconds it'll stay on for, it will expire, deal a big amount of damage to the one that was targeted, and then a little bit of damage to everything else around it as well. The second skill then, that we'd be running here is the Hardened Ward. This is our damage shield. This shield also shields up our pets as well. So if you think your pets may die in any kind of content, you can shield up. This will protect yourself and your pets. This is especially useful for Maelstrom as well. So we have our pet here. In content that we think we won't use a damage shield, we won't need it, so most vet dungeons where you have a decent healer, normal trials, that kind of stuff, where you want that extra bit of damage, we will switch the damage shield out for Boundless Storm. What Boundless Storm does is it turns us into basically living lightning. We deal just under 1,000 damage every second for 23 seconds, but while this is active, we get major resolve and major ward, increasing our physical and spell resistance by 5,280. So we have a huge amount of extra resistance while we have this online. So this is what the skill looks like. We've turned into lightning, and now if you look at our character, we have nearly 20,000 spell resistance and 15,000 physical resistance. So we're making us extra tanky. And all we need to do is just stand by something and it will trigger and just start shooting lightning out. So just having this active while you're fighting ads, if you're up in their face, they'll be taking continual damage. Ultimate we have on this bar is Meteor from the Mages Guild, Ice Comet I've got for the extra bit of damage and reducing movement speed. So you can take either morph of this, it's entirely up to you. The other morph will give you extra ultimate back when you cast it. We very rarely cast this. The only time we really do is if the boss is about to die and we don't have enough ultimate for our Destruction Staff ultimate. We only slot this to get the passive for the extra max magicka while having it slotted. Alternative, if you don't want to level up the Mages Guild skill line, I know it can be a pain to try and get, you can just put the Storm Atronach ultimate on here instead. This will summon an Atronach. It'll last for 28 seconds, which is a long time. It deals very heavy single target damage, and allies can activate a synergy, which will give the Atronach Major Berserk themselves, increasing the damage done by 25%. So that's going to be our main set of skills here. Alternative skills, sometimes we do want to change. We will need, for some content, for example, Crushing Shock. This can be hard to slot with the double pet because we have very limited room on our bars. So in the event that we need Crushing Shock, we will change our skill bar setup. So we'll drop the bird pet, so we will no longer have the self-heal from that bird pet. We will now be looking at using Crushing Shock in its place and the lightning form. So this is how our bar will look when we're doing Crushing Shock. So instead of the bird pet on this bar, we'll just be activating this. We'll still be doing damage with this and getting the defense buffs. And Crushing Shock, then this will interrupt anything that's casting. This is especially useful in quite a lot of trials, such as Hellra. It can be useful in Halls of Fabrication. Many different things will require you to interrupt enemies. Lots of dungeons as well. So we can take this Crushing Shock over the pet. If you feel like you're gonna need to heal yourself and you don't want to run the Boundless Storm, then our option here is going to be Power Surge. So while this is active, we gain Major Sorcery, increasing our weapon and spell damage, although this part is irrelevant because we will be using spell damage potions. While this is active, dealing critical damage will heal us for 2,550 health every second. We do have pretty good crit on this build, so we have this active, and then we'll heal every time we do damage. It lasts for just over 30 seconds, so we can just keep this up, then do your rotation like normal, Crushing Shock and whatnot, and while you're dealing damage doing what you do, you will be healing yourself at the same time. So they're the two options if you need to switch out your pet and then put on Crushing Shock instead. So the two options, Power Surge or Boundless Storm, and then this is how we want our back bar to be looking here then. If you feel like you don't need a damage shield, you could just go with Surge and then Boundless Storm on the back bar as well. So our bar would look like this. This will be our highest damage output, and we will have good resistance and self-healing. So if you feel like you don't need a shield and you're comfortable without the shield, you can also run the bar setup like that. So passives then, in our top skills, we don't use any of these skills, so a lot of these passives aren't going to be relevant, but reducing the magic and stamina cost of abilities by 5%, so a reduction of 5% for using our abilities is going to help our sustain. We don't use any dark magic abilities, so we don't need this passive. This one, after blocking an attack, your next magic and stamina ability costs 15% less. There will be times where you will need to block quite a lot in different content, so we'll just get a free cost reduction just for blocking, which we're going to be doing anyway. And we don't use dark magic abilities, so we don't need this passive. Daedric summoning, we will need all of these passives. You restore magic when one of your Daedric summoning pets is killed or unsummoned. Now in dungeons or trials this does not happen, they will not die, but there will be instances in the overworld or if you're in Maelstrom Arena where they will die, and this will be beneficial for you. Reducing the ultimate cost of abilities, this is essential. This will reduce the cost of our Destruction Staff ultimate, which means we can throw it out more and it's going to increase our damage by a lot. Daedric Protection increases your health and stamina recovery while you have a summoning ability active, so health recovery is going to be helpful. Stamina recovery isn't too relevant. It may help if we are in content where you need to block or dodge roll a lot, but the extra health recovery will be nice. And then this passive will increase our max health by 8% while we have a pet active. This is going to be very useful for us, so we're only on 18,000 here, and when we summon up our pet we now go up to 19,000, so that's an extra 1,000 health. Stack that with Eben from our tank and we get an extra, we're up to 20,000 health. If we look at Storm Calling, then our passives are going to need all of these. Increased magical recovery by 10%, so our sustain is going to be a lot stronger. Increases your physical and shock damage done by 5%. This build is pretty much all shock damage, so the extra 5% damage passive there is nice. Increases your damage done against enemies by 1% for every 10% health that they have. So start of the fight we will be doing a lot more damage. The higher the boss's health or the higher the minion's health, the more damage we do, so kind of like a reverse execute here. And then lastly we have increased weapon and spell damage by 2% for every sorcerer ability active. We do have a lot of sorcerer ability actives on both bar because of our pets and our bound Aegis, so it's always going to be a minimum of 6%. It's normally going to be 8%, so a lot of extra damage there. Destruction Staff, we will want all of the passives here as well. Shock Staff attacks will damage nearby enemies for 100% of the damage done. This is a heavy attack rotation, so while we are heavy attacking, all of the enemies around are also taking damage, so our heavy attacks are actually AoE damage, which is fantastic. This Destruction Staff abilities ignore 10% of their spell resistance, so extra penetration, extra damage. This increases our chance to put burning, concussion and shield effect by 100%, which is brilliant. We'll get the burning effect off of our flame glyph, and then the concussion, which will also help with off balance on our shock, wall of elements and heavy attacks and whatnot. This, while we have a lightning staff equipped, increases our damage done by area of effect abilities by 8%. All of our damage is area of effect, so all of our damage is increased by 8%. And then lastly, when we kill an enemy with this Destruction Staff ability, we restore 3,600 magicka as long as we have a Destruction Staff equipped, which we do. We have 2 Destruction Staff, so whenever we kill an enemy with these abilities, which is Wall of Elements, our ultimate, we're going to be restoring magicka, which is again good for our sustain. Light armor, we want all of the passives here, so reduces the effectiveness of snares. It's not really that relevant, and reducing the cost of sprint, but it can be helpful in some situations. This one increases our magic recovery by 4% for each piece equipped. We have all of our body pieces, apart from the helm and shoulders, are going to be light armor, so that's 20% more magic recovery and a 10% reduction of the cost for having our magicka, our light armor ability items slotted. This will give us extra spell resistance just for having light armor, which we're wearing, so we need to take this. When we have 5 or more light armor, increases our critical by 2,100, so we need to take this as well, and then an extra 4,800 spell penetration, all just for having light armor equipped. So we'll take all of these passives. Heavy armor, we want this passive. Increases health recovery by 4% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. So we have a heavy helmet, so that's 4% extra health recovery. And we also restore a tiny bit of magicka, 100 magicka and stamina when we take damage. This occurs every 4 seconds. It doesn't make a difference much, but though that extra bit of 100 magicka every so often, it will add up eventually. Increasing the max health by 2% for every heavy armor equipped, so that's an extra 2% max health as well, because we do have that one heavy piece. Fighter's Guild, the only passive we need here is Banish the Wicked, which is generating ultimate whenever we kill undead, Daedra or werewolf. Anything to get our ultimate up quicker so we can do more damage. Mage's Guild, you don't really need many of these passives, only if you're running Meteor, or if you decide to take Inner Light over Bound Aegis. So reducing the cost of the abilities, this will reduce the cost of your Meteor, so that ultimate will come out for less. Increases the duration of the damage over time by the Meteor as well, if you have this passive. The increase of max magicka and recovery by 2%, so a bit more max magic while having the Meteor slotted on that bar, and a little bit more recovery. And then after you cast Meteor, it grants you Empower, which will increase the damage of your light attack by 40%. You only need these passives if you are running Meteor on your back bar. If you're not, you will not need them. We're not using a Psijic Order build, so I haven't gone from any Psijic Order skills here. This you can take if you do decide to slot any Psijic abilities, but it's not required. Undaunted, we want Undaunted Command. Whenever you activate a synergy, you restore 4% of all of your resources. You 100% want to be doing this, and you want to be taking resources as well. Activating synergies like bubbles, you can activate shards. There'll be plenty of shards for the tank, so don't worry about that. The tank will have enough synergies to activate for Alkosh, because it has an 8-second cooldown, and there are plenty of synergies out there. So take the synergies, do the extra damage, restore your resources. This passive is why we wear one heavy and one medium on our Undaunted set. Increases our max health, stamina and magicka by 2% for each type of armor we have. And because we have a light, medium and heavy, we get 6% extra magic, stamina and health. This is why our health and magic pools are so much higher. The only reason I have the Inner Fire skill here is for Dragonstar Arena to taunt the boss. You don't need this unless you are going to be doing Dragonstar Arena. You want all of your class passives. This, whenever you activate a class ability, restore magic or stamina based on whichever is lowest. This may not seem that good, but in events where you are dodge rolling and blocking a lot, the restoring of stamina can be useful just for doing your rotation for or what you're going to be doing anyway. We don't really have anything that has a channel or cast time, so the last part of that is irrelevant as well. This, max magic by 2000, take this, more magic, more damage, and then spell damage increase as well. So that's all we're going to be doing for our passives. We also, want our medicinal use in alchemy. This will make our potions last longer, so instead of our spell damage potions lasting only 36 seconds, they now last 47 seconds, which means they will be up 100% of the time. We're not going to have a downtime of our potions. That extra 10 seconds where they're going to be up is going to be a massive difference in our damage output then, so we absolutely 100% need this skill on all damage characters. Now if we have a look at our champion points, here we put 48 into Warlord, reducing the cost of breaking free. We will get stunned in certain trials. This will help. Increases the magic and stamina, fully charged heavy attacks restore. This is a heavy attack build, so the 14% extra restore of resources will be helpful. 56 in Arcanist to restore magic recovery. Any extra magic recovery is going to help us sustain. And then reducing the cost of block and reducing the cost of dodge roll. You can take one or two out of this and put it in here just to maximize the efficiency, but it's entirely up to you how you prefer to set the green champion points. For our blue, we're going with 56 in Elfborn, increasing the critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 20%. So if our heal with our bird pet crits, it will do an extra 20% healing. So that's also good to note, as well as the critical damage that we're doing with our staff. Increases the flame, frost and shock damage and magic damage done by 12%. So we do flame and shock damage, so that's a nice passive to have there. And then increase spell penetration, 2692, so 30 in spell erosion, 56 in elemental expert, 56 in elfborn. We put 29 in staff expert, increases damage done with light and heavy attacks for destruction and resto staff. So we have light attacks, and this is a heavy attack rotation, so this is really nice to get the bit of extra damage there. And then increases damage done with direct damage attacks. We don't need much in here. Finally, we need 81 in Thaumaturge, increases damage done with damage over time effects by 24%. Pretty much all of our abilities are damage over time, so this will increase the damage of every one of our abilities by 24%. And then we also get a passive here, increases your damage done against off-balance enemies by 10%. So when we set off-balance with the shock staff wall of elements, like we saw earlier, this ability here, when they go off balance, we'll be there as the off balance tick. We'll be doing an extra 10% damage against enemies who are off balance. That will affect all of the mobs in a group as well, so that's really nice to have. So the rest of our champion points now then. These will be subject to change depending on the content that you're doing. You can maximize the efficiency for each veteran trial depending on what you're doing, so these will be subject to change, but this is what I like to run just as a general overall content setup. So 68 in Ironclad reduces damage done against direct damage attacks. Spell Shield gives us a bit more spell resistance. 49 in Hardy and Elemental Defender, so less physical, poison and disease, and less flame, frost, shock and magic damage. Thick Skinned, 48 there, reduces the damage done by damage over time effects by 18.24%. I put some in Bastion as well, increases the effectiveness of damage shields by 12%. You don't need anything in here. You can send these into the other skills here, so you can put more into Spell Shield if you like, to get more spell resistance. Depends how often you're going to be running your shield and if you want the extra bulk from the shield or not. You can put more into Quick Recovery as well, which increases your healing received. This will be good for your healers. You'll take more healing from your healers, and also you'll be healed a little bit more from your pet as well. So they are the champion points. In regards to race, Mundus and food, so Mundus Stone, we've got the Shadow, increases the critical damage done by 19%. You can take the Thief over the Shadow if you like. They both perform about the same. Food, we just want max health and max magic. Blue food, we don't need the Witch Mother's Brew or the Artesian Broth here, because our recovery is fine. We have enough recovery, and our heavy attack rotation manages our resources perfectly, so the extra health and the extra magic from this is much more beneficial. Race, I've gone for High Elf. They are just the best for damage output at the moment. In regards to potions, the damage potions we were talking about earlier are these. Gives you major sorcery, increasing spell damage by 20% for 47 seconds. Major prophecy gives you spell crit for 47 seconds. You restore magic, and you also increase your magic recovery. So these are the potions that you want to be using. With the alchemy passive, these will be kept up 100% of the time, so we'll have a good recovery and good damage from this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you a quick slow demonstration of the rotation, so you can see exactly how it works. There is a full speed rotation on my channel as well, if you'd like to look at that. Using this exact setup, it pulls 44,500 DPS, so you can check that for yourself as well. So this is how our bar is going to be set up here, and we're going to use the Mage's Guild Meteor Ultimate here. So I'll just quickly summon up the pets. So when we start a fight, we want to use our Destruction Staff Ultimate. The reason why we want to use this at the beginning of a fight is because we haven't got any of our dots or damage up yet. So our damage at the beginning will be a little bit slower. The heavy damage from the Destruction Staff Ultimate will make up for this. So you want to put the Destruction Staff Ultimate down first, then Liquid Lightning, Light Attack, Wall of Elements, Light Attack, Bar Swap, activate your Scamp pet, Light Attack, use the Curse, Heavy Attack, then use your Lightning Form ability. If you don't have the Lightning Form ability active and you have your damage shield, then you just Heavy Attack and Bar Swap. So then Liquid Lightning, Light Attack, Wall of Elements, Light Attack, Swap, Pet, Light Attack, Curse, Heavy Attack, and if you need to, reactivate this. So if we go a little bit faster then, so it's, and if you see here, we don't need to reactivate the Lightning Form because it's already active, so we can just Bar Swap and carry on. So Liquid Lightning, Light Attack, Wall of Elements, Light Attack, Switch, Pet, Light Attack, Curse, Heavy Attack, Lightning Form, Switch, Liquid Lightning, Heavy Attack, Light Attack, Wall of Elements, Light Attack, Switch, Pet, Light Attack, Curse, Heavy Attack, Switch. Keep your potions up 100% of the time as well, and then you can't go far wrong there. If you're going to do a damage test yourself as well, try and have a healer or somebody to cast Elemental Drain for you to simulate what it would be like in a trial or combat. That way you'll get the more recovery, and also you will get the extra penetration there. So this is the easy sorcerer. It's very easy to use. You only have 4 abilities or 5 abilities that you activate. It's just the Liquid Lightning, the Wall of Elements, your Pet, your Curse, Heavy Attack, Switch. For a lot of the harder content, you will be using the damage shield over the Lightning Form. You only use the Lightning Form when you're doing the easier content, or if you're really comfortable that you are going to survive. So this is how the bar will normally look. So it will just be a case of Liquid Lightning, Wall of Elements, Pet, Curse, Heavy Attack, Switch, and that's it. You'll have pretty much 100% sustain with your heavy attacks and your potion, so your magic is always going to be really, really high, and you're doing incredible damage. And if you need to, you can just activate your bird pet for a quick heal. So that's it for the Easy Pet Sorcerer. If you do have any questions, you can just message me at any time, or just post in the comments below, and I will answer them as best I can. Thank you very much.